It's not enough to rely on positional power or authority in the workplace. Influence is actually a much more powerful tool to getting what you want or what you need for yourself or for your team. So today, we're diving into how you can level up your influence as a communicator. And by the end of this interview, you'll have practical strategies to quickly improve your communication skills. Today's guest is Stacey Hanke. Stacey is a leading expert in communication and influence. For over 20 years, she has empowered Fortune 500 leaders and teams to elevate their communication skills to build the trust and credibility needed to influence action. In addition to being a Hall of Fame speaker, executive coach, and business leader, Stacey is the author of 3 books, including her newly released Influence Elevated, which provides leaders with skills to manage employees and increase accountability in a hybrid work environment. Her Monday to Monday philosophy empowers professionals to be impactful in every interaction, from presentations to everyday conversations, helping them drive action and achieve success. Now, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I share new episodes and other tips for managers every week. Now, here's my conversation with Stacey. Thank you so much for joining me today, Stacey. I'm super psyched to talk about influence. I feel like this is one of those things that we are constantly influencing people as managers, but we don't always think about it as our job is to influence people. But you could almost say that our entire job is actually just to influence our team and influence our organization and to get work done and to get good work done. So thanks for coming on and chatting with me.
Thank you. And I know this is always a big deal. So thanks for trusting me with your guests. And I'm so glad that you get it, that you're offering this gift to your followers, because you're hitting on something that a lot of leaders I coach, I share with them. Influence is this topic that's been out there for a long time. And a lot of us don't even really know what it is or can even recognize what is the how-tos. And that's why I would love us to unpack as we walk through this.
Why don't you start with what is influence? Because I think it's easy to think influence is power or influence is manipulation or lots of things. So actually, what is influence?
Yeah. And it is the whole idea of power, right? Because the whole idea is we're trying to get people to act on our recommendation, which could solve a problem, make a sale, whatever your line of work is. But when you look really at the core of it, it's your body language and your messaging. They are always consistent, Monday to Monday, because that way no one has to guess who's going to show up. And that includes every single conversation, personal life, professional life, the written word, think in social media, emails, or interaction. The second part of what influence is that you have this ability to move people to take action long after the conversation has occurred. That's important because even in your business, how many times have you met with someone or a potential client, someone you want to build a relationship with, and that trust, that influence may not happen at that very first interaction? What happens though, it's the consistency that person experiences with you over a course of time that elevates this idea of trust, and then you have the influence.
Yes. Well, and the first thing my brain went to is also the having influence over time piece. If you're having a conversation, I cannot tell you how many times with coaching clients or with my own team members are yes, this sounds great. I'm going to do this. Or even myself, right? I say that to people. Yes, I'm going to do this. And I really believe it in the moment. And then something happens and then I don't do it, right? Or they don't do it. And you're wait a second, what happened here? And it sounds like there's this element of influence. It's maybe we need that influence to stick in people's brains. It needs to be powerful enough to drive behavior and not just be an in the moment experience.
That's it. This isn't what makes influence so tough. I mean, obviously it's an intangible, right? We can't see it. We can see it though through reactions people have with us, how they experience us, how they respond to us, whether that's nonverbal or they take the action that we want them to take. And it's understanding too. I tell every one of my clients that getting this idea of you're officially influential, it doesn't happen that way. I always think of yoga. And yoga is a practice. It's called a practice for a reason. And elevating your influence is really the same thing. This is a journey, but are you consistent on that journey? Because the destination is never final. It's never there. It's who are you all impacting because of your consistent brand, how people experience you, whether they see you through a social media post, through your emails, or they get a chance to actually sit with you one-on-one.
Does that mean that we need to be attending to our brand or attending to our influence? if I don't talk to a team member for a couple of days because we work remotely and we're, maybe connecting a little bit on Slack here, like, do I need to be doing something differently or even just like more consistently to kind of maintain that level of influence that I have with someone?
It's if I don't see you in a couple of days and we're communicating via email, but your emails come across short, harsh. There's a lot of spelling errors in it. It looks like you just kind of threw it together and didn't give it thought. It's that stuff. And it seems so common sense. But what starts to happen, then you and I, we hop on a Zoom call and you're polished, you're sophisticated as I see you right now. I'm still reflecting, well, which one is she? I could share story after story of leaders that will share with me. They experience one of their team members to show up a certain way in person, and they're totally different on social media. Now, one thing I do want to confirm that to your followers, this isn't about being perfect. And now you're not who you are. This is about truly taking the best of who you are. And that's how you communicate your words, your body language, how you follow through, how you respond to messages timely or not. Is that consistent or are they a lot of hiccups? I'll give you another example. Sure, we all know someone in our life who is always late. Right? You think we're meeting for dinner at 6 and they show up at 6:30. Oh, they're never on time. So now it's that expectation, right? Versus you always show up on Zoom with your meetings on time. You're even there a minute before. So one meeting, you show up 10 minutes late because something that happened out of your control. You show up and this is powerful feedback when everyone else on the line says, we were, you weren't okay. It's not like you. You are always so prompt. Versus someone sees you in their Outlook calendar in the morning to just see what your day looks like. And they see your name, Amy, and they say, oh, this meeting is going to be such a waste of time. She's long-winded. It's going to take forever to get to the point. And those are the conversations I hear from leaders that I work with. They're talking about everyone else behind their back and they'll say, oh, their meetings are so long-winded. They're so boring. My point being, I'm guessing, this is your first action step for your followers. Don't be that person. Because no matter what's going on in our lives, there's two things we have control over. It's our development. How can we develop our communication, our influence as managers, no matter how much experience we've had? And the second is we really get to determine and control the personal brand, the reputation that people see, people experience. I just don't think we give it thought. We just kind of go through the motions every day.
And I think what I'm hearing you say is that how we're perceived is actually the thing that will give us influence or not, right?
100%.
And that we have control over those behaviors. And so
Right.
we need to be really intentional about them. And it also sounds like in some ways, like everything we're doing, everything we're communicating in our body language, in our tone of voice, in our words, in our emails, means like all of those things are giving people information about us and whether or not they should listen.
Completely. Yes. And I always share with no matter who I coach that it doesn't influence who you are, doesn't take the weekends off. And that's why I always talk about Monday to Monday. Like you can't be a real poor communicator over the weekends and then your first meeting on Monday, you turn it on. Influence really is who you are all the time, not some of the time. I really think that's the challenge, whether it's new managers that have been in that workforce for a while, that position, they don't realize that they're always under surveillance. Again, we're not asking for perfect. We're just being conscious that your next meeting, when you can see that people are bored, or you can see that you've just gone over their head because you're saying too much, you recognize it and you get back on track. It reminds me of my team was delivering a workshop on this topic for top tier leaders. So it would be leaders right underneath the executive suite. And in our workshops, we do a lot of video recording. So people record themselves on their phones. That way they can see themselves, experience themselves through the eyes and ears of the listeners versus us telling them what we think. And there was a VP in the room, crazy smart. She's VP of finance, crazy smart. When it came to her communication, she rubs people the wrong way, comes across very rigid, comes across very negative. And they were doing a recording. And then my instructors asked her peers, so give Mamie feedback. And you can tell they're kind of held back. And we're like, this is all about honest feedback. And they gave her the feedback. They said, you're so smart. However, it's funny time you hear the word, but however, coming after a compliment, there's a chance it's going to go on a downward slope at that point.
Yeah.
They said, however, you come across so rigid. And she's like, I do? Here's that feedback. Feedback's a whole nother issue with, I think, managers. We get fake feedback. Good, nice job. Or we don't get feedback at all. And we think we're doing them a favor, but we're doing them more harm than good. And here's a VP that just did not ever get that feedback. Probably that's a really important action step for your manager, especially if you're a newer manager. I think the best gift that you can give yourself is really start understanding how to ask for feedback, how to set it up, how to receive it, and then determine what do you do with it.
I love this idea of recording yourself. And it makes me think like, well, half of us are recording our Zoom meetings anyways all the time. We might as well go back and watch them and observe ourselves, observe our facial expressions and our tone of voice and how we facilitate that conversation. And are we drawing people in and are we giving people space and noticing how we're showing up? I mean, I watch myself on screen all the time because I watch all my episodes and things like that. And I will just warn anyone who decides they actually are going to do this, it can be a little cringy. Like it's not fun to watch yourself. And you do learn a lot about how you're showing up and how others might be perceiving you that you didn't even realize and never in a million years were intending. But it's right there on the screen and you can see it.
And that's the power of our phones. We've got the capability to do it. And a lot of times I'll do it when I'm on Zoom with a client. I'll just record myself with my phone right below my camera. And when I watch it, I'll always pay attention to how did I feel during the meeting with the client versus what I actually see and hear in that playback. Because that's your camera, your phone is the eyes and ears of your listeners. And too many managers go with this idea of if I feel good, if I feel comfortable in this situation, this conversation, if I feel comfortable with, I had a chance to prepare, comfort and ease has never defined influence. Be careful with it. And the best way to be careful with it, just from doing all these podcasts, it's just seeing yourself, seeing it, hearing it, and then deciding, okay, what do I want to do with it to make sure it enhances myself as a leader, as a manager, my brand versus distracts from it?
I wonder if you could share a story, maybe from a client you've worked with or someone of who's gone through this process and how it changed their behavior. Like, what did they actually do to show up and be able to have elevated or greater influence with their team or with their people?
God, there's a lot. Overall, watching yourself on a playback, unless you don't have a pulse, it will impact you. Like everyone, it's the common conversation we'll have with a client. I had no idea. No one's ever told me. I always get told how great I am. I hear that a lot. Or it's flip of that, Mammy, where that's better than I thought. Wow, I always thought when I talked and I got nervous, my whole face got red. I run out of air. So that piece of don't let them your guide. This is an executive example. I have so many examples. It was an executive. He was brought to me through the CEO saying he just got promoted to CFO. How he's communicated in the past will not work for this role. And then he went down the long list of he's rigid. He's treating his employees terribly. Well, I get him on a call and we start coaching. Now, keep in mind, this was a 3-month process with him. And one of the first calls I had with him, he pushed back. And finally, I said to him, either you're in or you're out because mentoring works not for you. You have to work for it. So you let me know, do you want to do this or not? And a lot of people they'll go to this place of they watch their first playback and they go to denial. And what happens is our body doesn't want to be uncomfortable. So when we see it or we hear it, we'll say, well, it's because I didn't know what to say. That really doesn't look like me. And like, really? That's you? That is you. So anyway, fast forward. And he just did, I don't know, had a huge turn. And I think what it was is the amount of time he saw himself on a playback. And before you know it, they do the employee survey. He had one of the highest scores. And this is coming from a guy, they were ready to let him go. And what's the moral of the story here? Not against him. He had no idea. He starts watching his playbacks and he's like, and when I asked him, is that really how you want to come across? And he's like, no, I didn't know. And no one's ever told me before.
And the truth is, even if they had.
Yeah. And even if they had, because how much feedback do we get? Do this, do that. Feedback is the unwanted gift sometimes. Yet if you prepare for the feedback, for example, help your managers here. Before we got on this call, started to record, if I said to you, Mamie, okay, here's what I'm working on. Would you watch for it? Would you listen for it? And then when we stop recording, you would give me feedback. I recommend any manager, if you want feedback from someone, though, it's got to be someone that you really trust is going to tell you the truth. Always prepare for it. Set it up.
Such a great tip, especially because then people know specifically what you're working on and they can give you that specific feedback. People never want to say like, are you open to this feedback? Or when you ask them, do you have any feedback for me? And then they're like, I don't know what to say here. I don't want to like make them mad at me if I say the wrong thing. But if you specifically say, I'm trying to improve my communication skills, or I'm trying to ask better questions, or I'm trying to do whatever it is, then they know exactly what to be looking for and they can give you feedback on something they know you're going to at least be curious to hear. Whether or not you like it is different.
Yeah, 100%. And that way too, we're trying to minimize only hearing good, nice job. That was great, because you can't do anything with it. Now, anytime your managers hear that, then ask, what did I do? What did I say where you gained the greatest feedback, or you gained the greatest impact, the greatest benefit? What could I do different? It's your job, because your development, it's your career, no matter where you want to take it. It's your responsibility to really figure out what is that feedback versus putting it on someone else.
I want to shift gears and go back to influence. And we're talking about kind of communication styles, right? Like everyone has their way of communicating, and there's not like a right way. Maybe there are some better ways, but one of the things you wrote about in your book was there are different styles of influence.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if you can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. I'm grabbing from my book because I never know these for heart. So what it is in the third book that got published last November, in chapter 2, we call it an impact IQ assessment. And what it does, it identifies your influence type. So like any assessment you may have taken, there's not a right or wrong. Some of my clients will come out with 2 influence types. Why it's important to know how do you influence. And then as any people leaders out there, I'd recommend having your team take it. And you can take the assessment complimentary on our website. So it definitely is there. So there's several that will come up. It's arbitrative, altruistic. These are different styles. Autonomous, inspiring. That says what it is, right? Inspiring, imperative, and egalitarian. And what I did in the book is each influence type, it will have its strength, what are its challenges, and what do you focus on? So we'll just give one. We'll just give one as example. So let's say you're an imperative influence type. So your strength is influencing top down through management levels. Your strength is you're very much into rules and policies and procedures. And then you're strong with being a quick decision maker. Now, the challenge of that is you're not much into the creativity and innovation. So why is that important? Find someone on your team who is, because they're going to be your partner to influence, say it's a client around something that's creative. The other challenge is you let the team members be more dependent. Now that works for someone who likes that kind of management style or influence style. Someone on your team that doesn't, you're going to have to learn to do that. So what's really your focus? You're very leader focused. And your team is there for fulfilling your needs. So that gives you just an example, and each style lays that out. Even before your followers take this influence type assessment, I think they should ask themselves, when it comes to influence, what do I want? Because without direction, taking an IQ assessment isn't going to help you out. But if you could just start off with, well, what do I want? Okay, if that's what I want, here's my type of influence style. How do they relate? How do they distract? And the answer to both of those questions is also going to help you determine, where do I need to develop? What do I need to grow if I want to continue to elevate my influence?
I love this. Can you give us an example of like what that goal is of the like what I want, and then with an influence style and how those things marry together?
Yes. You're really testing me out, but this is really, really good. So if I hear a lot that I want to be inspiring. I want to have impact on my team. I want to get individuals to trust me. So with an imperative leader, the challenge, because you're so leader focused and not so much into necessarily the development of your team, it's at least knowing that's what you want, but how does your influence type come across? And the gap there is, well, I'm going to maybe start asking more questions. What does my team really need from me? Because I'm not really going to seek that out. I'm just always thinking they can handle it on their own. They're in their roles for a reason. So by understanding what you want to what your type currently is, there's usually a gap there. And the gap is, well, this is what you need to work on. Or find someone on your team that can help you. So what we do internally here is everyone, through numerous assessments over the last year, I wanted to make sure my team was always in their unique ability lane. So whether I've got someone who is an inspiring influence type, well, if they're in that lane and they know that someone that they have to work with on the team is altruistic, which they're very employee focused. And if my inspiring leader is not, then they're working with someone on the team so they complement each other. I think that's why it's important to also have your team take this assessment.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but my guess is if this is how we tend to influence others, is that also how we likely want to be influenced?
Yeah, 100%.
Or things that resonate for us?
Yeah, 100%.
So I would imagine that knowing what your team members are would be super helpful, and knowing how to communicate to them in a way that is going to generate buy-in or help them feel empowered to kind of move in the right direction or move in the direction that you're hoping for.
Any assessment, including our assessment around your influence type, there's not a right or wrong. Every single type is a gift because it's who you are to the core. It's your unique ability of how you influence. It's just making sure that I'm making an assumption here. I really don't think you're not going to be all types. So it's knowing, where's my type? Now, who on my team do I need to go to lean on for certain projects, certain conversations, because they're the strength there.
Yes. Yes. So I did the little quiz in your book when I was reading it.
Oh, you did?
And
awesome.
Of course. I'm an egalitarian. No, not at all. I'm an egalitarian, which is someone who likes to bring people along, really hear from everyone, values all voices. And I was like, obviously that makes a lot of sense for the work that I do. And as I was answering the questions, I did have a few of the other styles, and some of the questions I answered with a different preference, but this was my overarching one. And then when I was reading about the challenges, I was like, oh yeah, this is exactly my challenges. Like, I want to hear from everybody. And so we make decisions slowly. And sometimes I don't always speak up with my opinion because I want to make sure that everyone else has their space for it. And so, I don't put forward enough of a vision. So I'm like, ooh, I can work on my influence styles and try to lean into different places. And then thinking about the complementary, it's interesting to see who else in my life has different styles and how do we partner? And I was like, oh, I love this. It really makes a lot of sense that the way that I get influenced is when people are like, Mimi, what do you think? Right. And I'm like, oh, yes, I'm in this conversation. But the way that I have to influence, let's say my husband, is a little differently because that's not how he wants to be influenced. So it's really very helpful.
I'm so glad you took it. And that's exactly it. When I have anyone that I mentor, when I'm doing one-on-one, we take a deep dive into the I want question, into the assessment before we start doing any mentoring. And they're always so surprised. I haven't met anyone that's taken an assessment like this. They're like,
no,
I haven't given thought to that there was a type. And then I always share with them, well, now it makes sense of why do you lean towards one person on your team versus another, because they have the type that you wish you had. And you know that they can help you get through some problem situations. I think in anything in life, it's just good to have a base because it defines you. It will be hard to influence others if you don't even understand why you do what you do.
And going back to like understanding how others like to be influenced, it also makes sense why sometimes you're like, why is it that this message or this, way that I explain something connected for like half my people and the other half are like pushing back hard. And we think it's always about the content, or at least I will speak for myself. I feel like it's always comes down to like, well, they just don't understand why this is a good decision, or like they just have different experience and they're bringing a different perspective.
Right.
And I just need to keep unearthing it. And if I can figure out like the root of the thing, then we can find our common ground. But sometimes that's not it at all. What I'm reading from you is that there are ways to influence people have actually nothing to do with the content. It's the way that you're communicating it that will either land for them or kind of be a miss.
Yes, 100%. It's so funny. And I'm to blame too. How many times I've thought the results I didn't achieve, the misunderstanding I had with someone earlier in my career, I never thought it was how I was communicating. And then you start watching yourself and you start listening through these recordings, you realize it's my communication. I mean, how many times have you heard someone in your life complain or accuse someone else of their poor communication, yet it was their communication that was the issue?
Oh, yes. We're all guilty of that. But we do have to start to wrap up here, Stacey. So can you tell us about a great manager that you worked for and what made this person such a fabulous boss?
I was very fortunate. It was earlier in my career. First, he introduced me to the industry that I'm living now. He introduced me to this whole idea of keynote speaking and making a career off of living on stages. He was so motivating. He allowed you to take risk, even if he knew you were going to fail, because he knew the failure was probably the biggest gift. So supportive. He was more concerned about you, that you were number one, because he supported development. And because he was my manager very early on in my career, that is so ingrained with me that no matter how many years you do what you do, or even when you switch careers, something no one can ever take away from you is your knowledge and your will, your drive to continuously develop. And he was just a big supporter of that. And someone that's fun, right? Even if you had a tough conversation, then be done with it and move on. And he really was always trying to create this fun environment.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing. And where can people learn more about you? Tell us the names of your books and where we can find them.
Influence Redefined is book 2. Always a great place to start because it ties to book 3, which is Influence Elevated, maximizing your connection Monday to Monday. All of that can be found on our website where there's a lot. We really post a lot of complimentary resources, videos, is social media. If you want to get connected with me there, my website, pretty simple. It's Stacey with an EY, HANKEINC.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much again for joining me. I love getting to understand my own influence style and for my team members. And I am looking forward to putting all of this into practice.
Thank you so much for trusting me with your followers too. Always a pleasure to do these.